Do you feel emotionally connected to your plants? As if in the process of caring for them, they as well are caring for you? What about planty DIYs and thrifting for plant items? If I have your attention, then the Plants by Wade Lee podcast is for you. Join me, plant friends, as we dig deep and experience the magic of plants. Hi, plant people. Welcome to the second season of the Plants by Wade Lee podcast. This is our 30th episode, and we are with Carnivorous Plants by Kenny Coogan, who I'm super excited to meet this weekend at PlantCon. I'm so excited to dig into what carnivorous plants are and how to take care of them. So welcome so much, Kenny.
Thank you so much, Wade, for having us.
Tell me a little bit about how you got started on your plant journey.
When I was a senior in high school, the hall monitor, the person who yells at people for running in the halls, he came in and gave a guest presentation to the AP biology class. And I was probably the only student who showed interest out of the 25 kids in the class. And then the next day in the hallway, he gifted me a carnivorous Venus flytrap and a carnivorous sundew. And then I quickly killed them within weeks. And then when I went off to college the next year, I found other people who liked carnivorous plants. And I said, oh, I know just the person who we should reconnect with. And then that led to me starting the Western New York Carnivorous Plant Club. And we met once a month. And then 18 years later, I was able to, well, maybe 15 years later, I was able to quit my real full-time job and turn carnivorous plants into my full-time hobby slash job slash early
retirement. I love that. Yes, because do you feel like carnivorous plants are trending right now? Is that, I mean, I don't know if that's even the word that we should use it, but because they're all such living, beautiful things, and I'm just saying trending, it kind of, I think, devalues it. But do you feel like there is a greater population of people who are interested in carnivorous plants right now?
Yeah, I think about 20 years ago, well, 30 and 40 years ago, you would have to get a paper printed newsletter to figure out where you could order carnivorous plants. 20 years ago, there was one really popular carnivorous plant nursery in California, and now there's dozens and dozens of growers and carnivorous plant only nurseries all over the world.
Yeah.
And if you go on social media, you can see very beautiful carnivorous plants that will make anyone envious.
Yeah, with deep yellows and purples, and it's unbelievable. Is there a carnivorous convention? Like, we will be at PlantCon in a few days.
Yeah, the International Carnivorous Plant Society has a international conference every other year. I think in 2026 it would be the 13th or the 14th conference. So they hold the conference every other year. There's no conference in 2025, but right now they're open to bids. So if there's a carnivorous plant local club or local society that wants to host, the International Carnivorous Plant Society wants to partner with you. The deadline is April 1st. In 2024, I went to Vienna, Austria for the International Carnivorous Plant Society's conference. And then the year before that, in 2023, I went to Himeji, Japan for the conference. And last year in Vienna, Austria, we had the most people attend. There was right around 200 people who attended, and these are people who are hiking mountains to discover new species of carnivorous plants, really huge tissue culture labs who specialize in carnivorous plants, really big nurseries, scientists, PhD students, and every conference is 2 or 3 days of lectures and then 2 or 3 days of field trips. And one of the field trips for Vienna was a winery. So it's not always carnivorous plant themed, but in Japan, we saw wild Drosera or sundews. And that was really exciting to see. I think we also saw some wild Utricularia, which are bladderworts. And in Japan, on a extra field trip that I took outside of the conference, we were hiking a mountain in Yakushima to see possibly the oldest tree in the entire world. It's documented at 5,000 to 7,000 years old, and it takes 6 hours to hike up the mountain and then 6 hours to hike down the mountain. And we stayed at a mountain hut, which is literally a hut with no electricity, no bathroom facilities. And right outside the hut, we saw a little shrew like jump out of the ground and chase
Yeah.
worms. But when we saw the sundews, we saw Japanese macaques, which are those really cute little monkeys that take hot tub baths in the
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
mountains. But it was surreal seeing them with wild sundews all peppering this rocky mountain where the snow melts down, so there's water trickling on the rocks, and there was literally thousands and thousands of sundews, glistening on the rock.
Yeah, it's amazing. And are those under a canopy or they're just growing in the sun with the
They
ice melt?
are exposed to full sun, but it is
Oh,
high elevation, but there's no canopy, or they're not growing in shade. The
yeah, yeah.
the hiker guide who we hired, he was saying that when it's the dry season, the entire population dies, and then they just come back the following year through seed.
Oh, wow. It's amazing. How many different types of carnivorous plants are there?
Depends on who you ask, but there's an estimated 800 to 1,000 species of plants who have evolved this carnivorous adaptation. They're found on every continent except for Antarctica. In addition to Japan, I've also seen carnivorous plants in Iceland and Alaska. And then
Wow.
we're in Florida. Florida has the most carnivorous plants out of all of the states in the US. Native species, and then we have one non-native species. And then sadly, we have one species of carnivorous plant that is extirpated, which means
Mhm.
we used to have it in Florida, but it has become extinct in the state of Florida. And now you can only find it in Central and South America. And that's because the last known site is now paved over for a section of the I-4 and a throughway to run on top of the last known site.
Mm-mm-mm. That's such a shame. And where are they growing? Like in the Everglades here in Florida?
So I wrote a book. It's called Florida's Carnivorous Plants, and I have all 33 species listed, and then each species, I have a little map of Florida with all the counties. So out of the 33, we have about one third in the panhandle of Florida, so in the north. Then we have one third in the south, including the Everglades, and then we have one third that's throughout the entire distribution of Florida.
Wow. That's amazing.
And you're asking about like shade, or sun. They are found, it's very hard to group them all together, but the ones that are in Florida, most of them like sunnier conditions rather than shadier conditions.
Interesting. Because in my mind, I think they like swampy areas where it's wet, but that's not the case.
They want wet soils, moist soils, but they want full sun. So
Yeah, yeah.
not all swamps are
In the
thick,
shade.
yeah, thick with Spanish moss hanging and trees and
You're-
stuff. So usually like that boggy, swampy soils are soft and they can't support really tall trees. So the places where the Florida pitcher plant Sarracenia species and the sundews and the butterworts, those are definitely trendy. All of those like wet soils, but a lot of sun.
What is your favorite species?
So my favorite species of the Nepenthes, which are the tropical pitcher plants, which are found in Asia, it's called Nepenthes bicalcarata, which means like two spurred. So underneath their lid, they have these two protrusions that look like fangs, and the fangs drip nectar. So when you look at the plant, it looks like it's drooling, and the
Ooh,
nectar attracts the bugs. The bugs go over to it. They drink from the nectar as a little reward, and then every once in a while, one of them will fall down into the pitcher, drown, and then 2 weeks to 2 months after that, the plant will digest that organism. So that's my favorite pitcher plant. But what I'm really into are very, very tiny utricularia, or very, very tiny flowering bladderworts. And their traps are under the soil or under the water. And nobody would grow them because they're carnivorous, because you don't see the traps, they're under the soil. But if you're lucky, multiple times a year they will flower. And one of them, which I'm going to bring to PlantCon, is called Utricularia sandersonii. And it has these tiny, tiny, tiny little flowers. One of my favorite are Utricularia bladderworts. They have these tiny, tiny, tiny little flowers. And Utricularia sandersonii has these tiny white flowers that resemble the Playboy bunny, and they're just so cute. They have these little rabbit ears.
That is so cool.
I have another species that kind of looks like a little white ghost. It has like a little head, and then it has like the little, like if you would put a sheet over yourself and pretend you're a ghost.
Yeah, and what is your care routine for them?
So it depends on the group of carnivorous plants you're talking about. The ones that are native to Florida, they do well sitting in 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch of water. So if you have a plate, you can just put the plant, or the saucer, you could put the plants, the potted plants on that, and then make sure there's water always in the saucer. And they need a lot of light. Sometimes a very, very sunny window is good, but it's better to have a grow light or to grow them outside in full sun. So if you're able to grow a tomato or a vegetable garden in that location, that would be a good place for the native Florida species of carnivorous plants. For the tropical pitcher plant, which you can see in like beautiful hanging baskets, and they have like different bulbous shapes of their pitchers. Most of them like to be grown kind of like an orchid in bright indirect lights. A sunny window is really good for them. Pool lanai, or like a cage, is good for them. So dappled sunlight. And then you're going to soak their soil, but you need to let them dry between waterings. Grown like our Florida natives, full sun, 6 to 8 hours of full direct sun, sitting in 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch of water all the time. But the biggest thing for all 800 or 1,000 carnivorous plant species is that all of them need rainwater or distilled water.
Interesting.
City water and well water will kill them. And I tell people, you do not need to experiment. We already know the answer, so do not play around with the plants. They need pure water. You can use reverse osmosis water as well, but that can be expensive. Mm-hmm. So I have a carnivorous plant nursery, and I have 10 50-gallon rain barrels, and that gets me through the whole year, because when it's the rainy season, you don't really have to water anything. The scientific answer, you need to have 50 parts per million of total dissolved solids or less, and the rainwater off of both of my roofs is close to 0. Maybe it goes up to 7, but it's far below what the carnivorous plants require. My city water in Tampa reads at about 390 parts per million of total dissolved solids, so that's 7 or 8 times worse than what they can handle.
Yeah, right.
Run my Florida State certified nursery out of my house. I have an acre, and every weekend, pretty much from September through May, I'm at a plant sale. And I do sell online. Right now, through March 1st, I have a pre-order. I'm importing about 700 rare and exotic Nepenthes, which are the tropical pitcher plants, from one of the oldest Nepenthes nursery. It's over 30 years old, and they're based out of Sri Lanka. So I'm getting, for the past 5 years, I've been importing 2 or 3 times a year. This is by far the biggest import I've had, because this past hurricane season, we had quite a bit of damage. So I'm rebuilding because of that. So every Monday I ship plants, but then every weekend I'm at a plant sale in Central Florida. So I go from like St. Petersburg to Tampa to Lakeland to Orlando down to Sarasota.
Where can people find the information of where those markets are if they're local?
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is kennycoogan.com, or you could go to Facebook, which is facebook.com/carnivorous plants by Kenny Coogan. And both, actually, I think Instagram also has that graphic that shows all of my spring plant sales.
Awesome. Do you have any other plants like in your collection other than carnivorous plants?
So I like having a vegetable garden. That's for myself. And then I'm really into the carnivorous plants. I cannot identify more than 3 philodendrons or aroids, but what I really, really like are ant plants. And ant
Okay.
plants are not carnivorous. They do the opposite. They provide homes for ants in Asia and Australia mostly. And then I did a presentation about ant plants. Okay, so the thing that's special about ant plants is that they provide a home for the ants in their caudex. So they have like this big bulbous base. Some of them can get bigger than your head. And if you would cut it open, it would look like an ant farm. It has these little tunnels and holes in it that the ant makes naturally to entice the ants to move in. The ants move in, they bring their food, they have babies in there. The food decomposes, the babies go to the bathroom in there, it fertilizes the plant, and then if something is eating
From
the
the inside out. Sorry, Kenny,
yeah,
but it's so, science is fascinating. It's like feeding itself from the inside out. Okay, go ahead.
but then it gets better because if the ant plant is under attack by like a big tree kangaroo or something that's like eating the leaves or a squirrel, the ants come out and attack that animal. So the plant is happy because it gets nutrients and protection, and then the ants are happy because they get a home. There's over 100 species of ant plants or things that you can categorize as ant plants. Right now I have about 20 in my personal collection, and then I do sell a couple of species, and I did a ant plant presentation for the Pinellas County, which is like the St. Pete Rare Plant Society, and somebody gifted me a ant plant acacia tree from Mexico. The tree's only like 3 or 4 foot tall right now, but it's called a bullhorn acacia tree from Mexico. There's also acacia trees in Africa, but this one's from Central America. It has these huge 2 to 3 inch long horn, like thorns, but that look like bullhorns, and they're hollow, and then the ants live in there. So if something starts eating it, the ants will come out. But everybody says, oh, I don't want this plant because it's going to attract ants. But each ant species, each ant plant has its own ant species. So there's some,
Really?
yeah, so there's some ferns that are ant plants. There's some, lots of different genuses, lots of different groups of plants that have this symbiotic, mutualistic relationship with ants. And just because you like are growing it in Florida doesn't mean that the Florida ants are going to know what to do with it. So people grow them because they look really cool.
That's amazing. And you will be at PlantCon this weekend.
Yes, and on Saturday I'll be giving a 40-minute talk about Florida's native carnivorous plants. And I'll have my booth. I'll have native Florida carnivorous plants as well as some more exotic carnivorous plants. And I will have a small selection of ant plants. So like I was mentioning, the caudex or the base gets really
Yeah.
big and they look super cool. But the only way you can get them to look like that is if you grow them from seed. So you can take cuttings, but if you do that, you'll just have this skinny plant that doesn't look like anything. So I do have probably 36 seedlings, but they're literally like a half an inch big right now. They're not the basketball size, mother plants.
Right, right.
I will be
How long does
bringing
it take to mature that way?
maybe 5 to 10 years. I will be bringing one mother ant plant as a specimen that probably will not be for sale, but I just
Yeah,
want to bring it so people can see what all these little babies will turn into because it looks identical to like a kid's ant farm.
that's so cool. I cannot wait to hang out with you at PlantCon. Do you know the number of your booth?
I can look it up real fast.
Yeah, and I can add it in the description as well, but
I'm going to
yeah.
say H9 maybe.
Okay,
I'm on the wall.
perfect.
We have a YouTube and it's okay. It's youtube.com/@ Carnivorous Plants by Kenny Coogan.
Perfect, perfect. And people can find different videos of carnivorous plants. What would be a beginner carnivorous plant that you would recommend for someone who's interested and doesn't really know the route to go?
That is an excellent question because I have hundreds and hundreds of them, and I'm going to be bringing them to PlantCon, and I also sell them on my website. And it's called Drosera capensis, or the Cape Sundew, and they get very large. They get bigger than a softball. They have dozens and dozens of sticky leaves that glisten in the sun. They make the perfect house plant. They look gorgeous. They have like red stems and then kind of like green leaves with this red dew, so they're like really attractive. But the biggest thing is that they eat fruit flies and fungus gnats.
That's
So
amazing.
every houseplant person wants them. And I just did a plant sale this past weekend, and I sold out of them because they look amazing, and everybody wants a plant that's going to eat like the banana flies or like the sink fly, the drain flies.
Yeah.
And luckily they're very easy to grow. They like to sit in like an eighth of an inch, quarter inch of water. They do fantastic under grow lights. They do really well with a very sunny window. If they're not dewy, they need more light. They are basically like that fly paper, like that ugly yellow fly paper that somebody would hang in a barn or something. But what's cool about them is that if they eat something like a little bit bigger than a fruit fly or a fungus gnat, like a house fly, they will wrap their leaf around it in real time. So within like 45 minutes, you can see the leaf like completely curl around the bug to get as much contact as possible. And then after a couple of days, it absorbs it through its leaves. So not all carnivorous plants move like those beautiful native pitcher plants or the tropical pitcher plants. Once they pop open their mouth, bugs just fall in and they don't move. Of course, they're beautiful. But a lot of times, like, kids want something that moves a little bit that they can kind of interact with.
Right.
The Venus flytrap goes dormant. It slows down from November to February. Whereas the Cape Sundew, it grows year-round. It flowers. I'll have several that are flowering. And they produce one beautiful pink flower a day for 10 to 14 days. So on this big scape, they'll just keep producing this really beautiful pink flower. You don't have to do anything to it. It will self-pollinate. Then you can collect your own seeds. Sometimes they'll have like little pups off to their side that you can pull apart and you can like start another pot, give one to your friend.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's so hard to say what my favorite is, but it's an easy plant, so it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fertilizing. You don't need to fertilize a carnivorous plant, or do you?
So there's all those up to 1,000 species of carnivorous plants. They all evolved carnivory at least 8 different times and different geographic spaces and times because they were trying to solve the problem of like, how do I grow in a nutrient poor soil or a nutrient poor environment? So a lot of carnivorous plants don't really do well with a lot of fertilizer. Some of them can handle a little bit. If you purchase a plant from me at PlantCon or online, I have a very detailed postcard that has like line by line of how to grow every carnivorous plant I sell. The biggest thing is pure water, rainwater, distilled water, and then the second thing is the lighting conditions. And then if you can keep them alive for like 3 to 6 months, then you can start playing around with fertilizer.
Yeah.
For the tropical pitcher plants, the Nepenthes, for those you can use a diluted orchid fertilizer or a diluted seaweed-based fertilizer. So you can read the instructions and then whatever it says, you can dilute it by 1/4. And I foliar spray them on the 1st and the 15th of every month. So you can do it like, 2 times a month. You can very gently spray the sundews, and if you do spray them with that type of fertilizer, for the Cape Sundew, you will see their leaves move and contort trying to grab the fertilizer.
That's so cool.
I would not fertilize a Venus flytrap. And then, yeah, let's just try to keep them alive for the first 6 months and then refer to the card for other fertilizer instructions.
Yeah.
A great way to fertilize them is you could buy dead crickets or dead mealworms or fish food flakes or fish food, like beta fish food pellets. And you can hand feed the carnivorous plants. But like, a quote normal fertilizer are not always the best, because what will happen is the roots will burn, the leaves will burn, and you probably won't have a happy.
Awesome. Kenny, thank you so much. I also want to let everyone know the pre-sale goes to March 1st, you said. Okay.
Yep. So the pre-sale goes until March 1st, and then we ship your plants around March 5th. And then I always tell people that, like, the quote leftover plants that don't get sold during the pre-order, I sell locally. But the fear of that is that all the quote good ones are gone. So I mentioned my favorite is the Bicalcarata, the ones with the fangs. But there's also ones that have ribbed peristomes, which are like the lips. And a lot of people like that. You mentioned like the bright purples and the bright yellows. If they have like a stripy mouth, those ones go fast. I get 5 to 25 of each species or hybrid. And for this pre-order, we're offering over 70 different species and hybrids. So there's a lot to choose from. And another tip is, if you're brand new to carnivorous plants, if you go to my website, you'll see that the pre-order is categorized by lowland, intermediate, and highland. So lowland plants like it hot and steamy all the time. So they like it 75 to 90, 95 degrees all the time and like 100% humidity. So if you're like living in Central to South Florida, it's pretty good, but you still need to protect them in the winter a little bit.
Yeah.
Highland plants are from the top of the mountain. They like cooler conditions. So they like 70s during the day, but they like these during the night. So a lot of people who are really serious have like deli display cases. They have like those fridges that you would find at like Aldi, when you look down into the refrigeration section, they're like taking it really serious. And then there are some plants that are called intermediate, which means they're in the middle of the mountain. So that means they can handle temperatures between 50 and 90 degrees. So if you want something that's easy, if you sort by intermediate, or if you ask your local carnivorous plant person, like, do you have any intermediate Nepenthes? Those tolerate a wider range of conditions, and they make excellent house plants. And you don't need to do anything with the temperature. You don't have to heat them. You don't have to cool them. And also, intermediates are a naturally occurring thing, but growers have also purposefully bred highlands to lowlands, so you can get both, the best of both worlds.
Right. That's awesome. Well, for everyone listening, if you go to the pre-sale and you use the code WADE, you'll get 15% off, correct?
Yes.
So I definitely want to direct everyone to KennyCoogan.com to do the pre-order. Thank you so much, Kenny. I'm so excited for one to hang out with you at your booth. Also, to go to your workshop. Is that on Saturday or Sunday?
It's Saturday from 1:15 to 2:15, so I'll be giving a talk on the native carnivorous plants. We're going to do all 33 plus the non-native one in 34 plants in 40 minutes.
Perfect. Sounds awesome. Kenny, thank you so much. I will see you this weekend. I'm so glad that you joined me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade.
Of course.